Hello, welcome to the news on NTA International. I'm Nancy Godi Anganihu. On sign language is Precious Ozemene. First, the headlines. Senate commends President Tinubu's directive for establishment of forest guards to curb rising insecurity. Federal government inaugurates renewed Hope Smart Police Station. NATO foreign ministers meet in Turkey. Ukraine-Russia ceasefire on the front burner. Nations have commended Nigeria for successful hosting of the Rabat process and have expressed commitment to drive migration policies for sustainable development in their respective countries. This was during the closing ceremony of the first thematic meeting in Abuja. The report.
It is the last day of the thematic meeting of the Rabat process, as participating countries reached a consensus on promoting youth inclusion and migration governance. For these key players, recognizing the contributions of youths for sustainable development with a focus on exploring youth-specific migration pathways in the aspects of education and innovation in countries of origin needs consideration.
The future we seek requires bold partnership. Let us move from conversation to coordination, from policy to practice. Let us remind the world that migration, at its best, is a celebration of what we can build across borders. We are committed to championing a youth-centered policies that prioritize skills, mobility, and dignity.
We need to move from inclusion to the co-creation of a space of dialogue. And this space of dialogue is the Rabat process. We will keep exploring ways in which to find how to make more sustainable your participation in the process.
We will achieve a lot in terms of implementation of particularly the youth to be involved in migration process, to be involved in the policy making, to be involved in implementation.
As the thematic meeting winds down, participants are optimistic in changing the narrative and promised to strengthen partnerships with a shared vision to explore ways of maximizing the potential of African youth. In Abuja, Ruth Aguele, NTA News.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says Washington was impatient for progress in peace efforts between Ukraine and Russia and willing to consider virtually any mechanism to reach a lasting end to the war. From Apanye reports.
The big issue on everyone's mind is what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. The President of the United States has been abundantly clear he wants the war to end. We want to see progress made in that regard, and whatever mechanism is outlined, whatever the process is that needs to happen, I mean, we are open to being constructive and helpful in any way we can to end a conflict.
These comments are coming ahead of potential direct talks between Ukraine and Russia to end the war, with U.S. President Donald Trump pressing both sides for results. Rubio said he's open to virtually any mechanism that gets to a just, enduring, and lasting peace, and that is what he wants to see. NATO chief Mark Rutte says he was cautiously optimistic for progress towards peace in Ukraine, but that it was up to Russia to take the next steps necessary.
Ukraine is ready to commit to a ceasefire and immediate negotiations. That's absolutely clear. The ball is now clearly in Russia's court.
Reports say Russian President Vladimir Putin appears poised to skip talks in Istanbul that is initially proposed and which Ukraine's leader Volodymyr Zelensky agreed to attend in person. Rutte said Russia was sending a lower-level delegation out to Turkey to the peace talks. Despite the hopeful tone from the NATO boss, European foreign ministers were also downbeat on Russia's willingness to make advances.
It's hugely important that we recommit to Europe's defences and that we step up alongside our US partners in this challenging geopolitical moment where there are so many pressures across the world and particularly in the Indo-Pacific.
Francis Jean-Noel Barrett said the best they can hope for in these technical discussions is a ceasefire, an immediate unconditional ceasefire that will allow for proper peace negotiation. He insisted talks needed to avoid the same traps that caused negotiations to fail back in 2022 and warned that Europe was preparing massive sanctions on Russia's financial and energy sectors if the Kremlin does not make concessions. Frama Pani, NTA News.
U.S. President Donald Trump was received in Abu Dhabi on Thursday by President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Trump's tour of the Middle East includes Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE. Upon arrival in Abu Dhabi, President Trump met with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan for high-level talks focused on strengthening bilateral ties. The three have invested trillions in the United States, with discussions set to cover economic partnerships, diplomacy and security and conflict resolution, among many other areas. Reports say UAE Air Force F-16 and Mirage fighter jets provided an honorary escort for U.S. President Donald Trump as he arrived in Abu Dhabi for the final leg of his Gulf tour on Thursday. Trump's regional tour includes visits to Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Discussions throughout the trip are expected to focus on deepening economic partnerships, enhancing diplomatic cooperation and addressing regional security and conflict resolution. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese met with Indonesia counterparts on the first international visit since his re-election. Australia's Prime Minister held talks with the Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto on defense cooperation and global trade, describing Jakarta as an indispensable partner. Albanese was sworn in Tuesday after his centre-left Labour Party won an increased majority in Parliament. He said his visit showed the priority Canberra placed on defence and economic ties with Jakarta. Indonesia is an indispensable partner for Australia, he said in opening remarks while meeting with Prabowo and ministers at the Presidential Palace. Australia wants to increase economic ties with Southeast Asia as it seeks to diversify export markets to reduce reliance on China and in response to trade uncertainty caused by U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. 2 days after resigning as the head of Côte d'Ivoire's main opposition party, former international banker Tidjane Thiam was re-elected to the post. From Mapai reports.
Thiam resigned as leader of the Democratic Party of Ivory Coast, PDCI, on Monday in the fallout from a court barring him from standing in presidential election on October 25. Thiam was the only candidate in the new party ballot and received 99.77% of the 5,190 votes cast at a special Congress, said party vice chairman Georges Ezale. Several dozen supporters applauded outside the party headquarters as the result was announced. Thiam has blamed judicial harassment for the action that saw him effectively rule out of the presidential vote. An Abidjan court struck him off the electoral list last month, saying the 62-year-old had lost Ivorian nationality when he acquired French citizenship in 1987, as presidential candidates are not allowed to hold dual citizenship. Thiam was born in Côte d'Ivoire and renounced his French nationality in March to enable his run for the top job. Thiam, who has not been in Côte d'Ivoire for more than a month, still faces a legal case expected to be heard Thursday against his original election as head of the PDCI in 2023. That case was brought by a party member who also contests Thiam's Ivorian nationality. Ivorian authorities insist that only the courts can change the electoral list. 3 other opposition figures have also been excluded from the presidential race due to convictions, including former President Laurent Gbagbo. President Alassane Ouattara, 83 years old and in office since 2011, is yet to be nominated by his party, but has indicated his desire to continue to serve the country. Frama Pani, NTA News.
May the 15th is set aside by the United Nations as the International Day of Families. The day was proclaimed by the UN General Assembly in 1993 with Resolution ARS 47/23 and reflects the importance the international community attaches to families. The day provides an opportunity to promote awareness on issues relating to families and to increase knowledge of the social, economic and demographic processes affecting families. This theme encourages households to adopt eco-friendly habits, reduce carbon footprints, and become climate champions within their communities. At its core, Family Day is a celebration of the values that bind families together, and these are love, respect, and support. Nigeria, as part of the global community, is committed to strengthening the implementation of international humanitarian law treaties. This is the convergence of opinion at the high-level 2025 dialogue of all critical stakeholders on humanitarian issues in Abuja. Dele Atumbi of our judiciary desk was there.
For Nigeria as a sovereign nation which anchored its governance on the principles of justice and rule of law, this critical dialogue presents not only an opportunity to evaluate our commitment, but also to reaffirm our resolute dedication to ensuring full compliance with the principles and obligations enshrined in the various international humanitarian law treaties. The dialogue is a solemn call to action and a demonstration of the country's commitment to ensuring that the Nigerian government achieves acceptable balance between our constitutional duty to combat insecurity and observe our international obligations under the various rules and protocols set out in the Hague and Geneva Conventions. These rules and protocol form the backbone of international humanitarian law as well as the Rome Statute. As the country continues to navigate complex security challenges, the law of armed conflict serves as our guiding compass by providing ethical legal framework in our armed engagements so as to enable her preserve humanity, ensure dignity, and uphold justice.
As part of our ongoing reform efforts, I am pleased to report that significant progress has been achieved in the process of domesticating key international instruments.
These obligations, domesticated through the Geneva Conventions Act of 1960, remain legally binding and morally compelling.
Participants are of the view that Nigeria remains steadfast in our commitment to strengthening legal frameworks and ensuring compliance with international treaties through collaboration between government agencies, humanitarian and civil society organizations.
Our journey has been defined by intentional reforms, robust interagency collaboration, and constructive partnerships with international and local stakeholders.
Nigeria has assiduously adhered to the Geneva Conventions and additional protocols, imposing limits during armed conflicts to ensure victims, particularly civilians, are better protected, and is committed to promoting IHL among soldiers and civilians.
Participants also agree that the present administration has been mobilizing the totality of its national security, military, and law enforcement assets to secure the country in an humanitarian manner. In Abuja, Dele Atumbi, NTA News.
The Minister of Defense, Mohammed Badaru Abubakar, has reaffirmed Nigeria's unwavering commitment to the United Nations and the global community in promoting peace and security. The minister reaffirmed this during the high-level plenary of the 2025 United Nations Peacekeeping Ministerial in Berlin. In his address, the minister highlighted Nigeria's active participation in international peacekeeping efforts, noting the country's rotation of the base protection force deployed with the United Nations Interim Security Force in Abuja and the formed police unit at the United Nations Transition Mission in Somalia. He stressed Nigeria's critical leadership role in sub-regional peace initiatives under the auspices of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and the African Union, AU, citing Nigeria's significant contributions to peacekeeping missions in Sierra Leone and Liberia, and more recently, engagements in the Gambia and Guinea-Bissau. Senate has commended the recent directive of President Bola Tinubu to the National Assembly, a security advisor, to establish forest guards to curb rising insecurity. Senate also suggested that the Nigeria Forest Security Service Bill, awaiting President's assent, could be amended to accommodate the proposed forest guard. These were some of the adoptions by the Senate, sequel to a motion urging authorities to secure the release of a traditional ruler, Obalohun of Okoloke, James Ogunyada, who was abducted early Thursday morning in Yaba, West Local Government area of Kogi State. Senate also urged the police to investigate the recent attacks on Benue South senatorial districts, during which 13 people lost their lives. Senate has, in the meantime, set up a 20-man committee to organize a summit on national security with Senate leader Opeyemi Bamidele as chairman. Senate has passed for second reading bill to establish National Agency for Malaria Eradication.
Malaria eradication is something that I believe strongly will assist Nigeria. And it's a disease of the tropics, but at the same time, if we're able to curb it, it will help to reduce infant mortality, maternal mortality, and help a lot of people to grow to reach old age. It's a major problem in most of the areas, particularly in Africa.
You're watching the news on NTA International. Let's take a break. Thank you for staying with us. Now, following United States aid cuts gradually taking its toll on some nations, health watchers in Nigeria want the federal government to prioritize research funding in alternative medicine to advance breakthroughs. Elizabeth Omori reports that this was at a health forum where discussions also focused on mental well-being. Her report.
Recognizing the importance of alternative medicine requires proactive, holistic and integrated approaches to promote an effective health system. Experts say alternative medicine practices rely on natural remedies such as herbs, supplements and specific diets. This gathering of erudite scholars in the field of alternative medicine aims to amplify benefits of God's healing power through medicine. Dr. Jofia is a cancer survivor.
Every plant is very important. You just cut off any plant, no.
Our forefathers, 80, 100 years, they do surgery, they do a lot of things, they cure, but there was no orthodox medicine like now. And what do they use? They use alternative medicine. That the government should support us.
The forum also analyzed their holistic approach to alternative medicine, which focuses on emotional and physical well-being.
Issues of people breaking down constantly with health issues and things. People associate it to, now your village people, now this. No, sometimes it's the state of the mind. When the state of your mind is unhealthy, everything becomes toxic in you. So we need women to once in a while unwind, find time to relax, do that thing that they love doing, and also take care of themselves.
They recommend improved funding in alternative medicine research, regular medical checks, and exercise to aid mental health. Elizabeth Omori, NTA News.
The National Environmental Standards and Regulation Enforcement Agency, NESRA, has shut down 21 facilities in the Federal Capital Territory for failing to comply with extant environmental laws. Mina Daniels reports.
FCT residents may soon enjoy environmental serenity as National Environmental Standards Regulation and Enforcement Agency, NESRA, moves to sanction pollution offenders. Among the facilities and projects sealed off recently for breaching pollution extant laws in a recent enforcement move of the agency in the FCT includes Ochacho Real Homes Limited, Idu, Cosgrove Shopping Mall Project, Wuse 2, Belmont Court, Idu, and 18 others. Addressing the media after the operation, the Director General of NESRA, Professor Innocent Bariko, informed that the enforcement exercise was carried out to halt the adverse environmental impacts of the activities of these facilities.
It's a process. We don't just get up and start doing. There's a regulation, and we follow the regulation step by step. Now, what you find there is that it's to call their attention to an infraction, an environmental infraction. It doesn't mean that we have come to the end of the road. We're also expecting that they will respond.
Contractors, they know what the law says. They know issue about EIA Act. It's not something that started today or yesterday.
Professor Bariko also stated that the construction sector has continued to deviate from the provisions of the National Environmental Construction Sector Regulations 2011 and the Environmental Impact Assessment Act and called on offenders to desist. The swift enforcement exercise by the agency is a move that has sent signals to potential offenders to make hay while the sun shines. For residents, it's time to sleep with both eyes closed once again. In Abuja, Maynard Daniels, NTA News.
The House of Representatives has condemned what it described as the agony that trailed the 2025 Joint Admissions and Matriculations Board examination and resolved to investigate the matter. Ignatius Nkwo has more.
Well, that was the motion that came under matter of urgent public importance, and it was the first one. And, well, actually, members were engaged on that particular motion. You saw interest, you saw emotions as Representative Adewale Adebayo described that issue, the circumstances of the 2025 JAMB result as an agony. He said that exercise did not just only witness massive failure, but also loss of life, as the House in its entirety made some resolutions, and particularly that there should be establishment of all the exam centers in all the 704 local governments across the states. And then they also resolved to invite the registrar for question and investigation. Now, but I have with me here a member who wants to talk on this particular motion. Thank you for joining us. Now, you saw that motion, you saw feelings, you saw emotions there in the chamber as regards to that 2025 JAMB. Now, what do you think drove that motion in the House?
It has been deliberated upon, discussed, and views were presented and discussed. We come to realize that there are a lot to be done on it, and the Speaker agreed that the investigation should go on so that the House will be availed with the required and necessary information to be able to take further actions. Despite the fact that the registrar has come out publicly to, first of all, for the first time, I had somebody coming out with remorseful to say, yes, he takes responsibility on behalf of JAMB. He knows that there were a lot of, problems that culminated into all this failure and the rest of it. I think the resolution is cogent, is very important, because the moment JAMB or students have problem, the entire education ecosystem will be affected. So the resolution is perfect. The committee will investigate with a view to report back to the House to deliberate and see way forward.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Before then, 3 members in the chamber defected. Now, one member, Oluwaloke from Osun State, defected from the PDP to the APC. Another member from Kano, 2 members from Kano State, Kabiru Al-Hassan and Abdullahi Sani, all defected from the NNPP to the APC. Well, that defection witnessed a presence of people who came for solidarity, led by the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, Abdullahi Omar Ganduje. Well, this is what we have for you at the moment.
Thank you, Ignatius, for that update from the House of Representatives. The National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, says more collaborations will be vigorously explored to effectively manage disaster risks and strengthen the country's resilience. Director General of the agency, Zubeida Umar, stated this are the stakeholders' engagement on the 2025 National Preparedness and Response Campaign for flood, disaster and related hazards. Ilyasu Ali Yakubu reports.
Seasonal climate predictions on the annual flood outlook by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, and Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, NISA, have provided the agency valuable insight into rainfall pattern and flood scenarios during the year. These stakeholders' engagement is poised to deliberate extensively to find lasting solutions to the perennial hazards. The NEMA boss said the agency has developed disaster mitigation strategies which include capacity building of local emergency responders, simulation exercises, rainwater harvesting, adherence to predicted rainfall onset before planting by farmers, irrigation as alternative source of water for agriculture, vaccination of livestock, effective contingency proposition of basic family needs and risk transfer where necessary.
I find it necessary to stress that disaster management across the world is predicated on community participation and due consideration to diversity of persons, leaving no one behind.
Other speakers suggest that these collaborative meetings must be sustained to give opportunities for frequent appraisal of the situation and identify areas of concern.
This campaign is a national call to action. It is a strategic effort to galvanize multiple sectorial collaboration, early warning system, anticipatory action, and community-level preparedness.
NEMA has already commenced other mitigation activities such as desilting of drainages and natural waterways, integrity tests for critical infrastructure, as well as evacuation of some residents in the flood-prone areas. In Abuja, Ilyasu Ali Yakubu, NTA News.
Members of the All Progressives Congress, APC, comprising serving governors, ministers and National Working Committee of the governing party, have met to review recent developments around the party and governance of the country. The meeting commended the implementation pace of the Renewed Hope agenda and pledged to continue to support ideals of the APC transformative leadership. Correspondent Abubakar Akwanga reports.
The elaborate session, which was held closed door for several hours, revealed that APC is making a significant difference in the governance of Nigeria, especially in the management of high-profile foreign debts.
Today, Mr. President is being vindicated. Gradually, international organizations like World Bank, IMF, are now beginning to commend the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for taking bold decisions in embarking on a reform-driven government.
The session also reaffirmed support for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and scored his administration high in the delivery of the Renewed Hope agenda to Nigerians and spoke on May 29 preparations.
As we reach our midpoint, it is also important for all of us, the presidential communication team, the national communication team, everyone to come together so that we can look at our messaging and fine-tune it, so that Nigerians can be better informed and enlightened about our activities and programs.
And our meeting went well. We put our heads together, we discussed, and we agreed that going forward, working as a family, we must struggle to serve Nigeria better.
The meeting also resolved to ensure the administration of the party affairs thrive in line with emerging trends and appealed for support and solidarity at all levels. In Abuja, Abubakar Akwanga, NTA News.
That's it on the news. On behalf of Precious Ozomenam, who's been doing the sign language, this is Nancy Godiangunehu thanking you. Bye.